The following is a clip from my interview with guitarist JJ French of Twisted Sister. If you want to see the full interview, it's linked below. So JJ, when Nirvana blew up in the early 90s, Twisted Sister, of course, was already retired at that point, so the grunge explosion didn't really affect you personally, but as we all know, when grunge hit, it really took a toll on the glam scene in general. How did you feel about that situation as it was unfolding?
Well, I didn't really know personally how bad it was until I spoke to Vito Bratta of White Lion. And White Lion was a hot, quote, hair metal band. They were from Staten Island, but they were local guys, and we knew them. So I called Vito this was about a year later, so like 92 maybe, because I think Nirvana came out in 91. I think Smells Like Teen Spirit hit in 91. After I saw the wasteland in front of me and going, man, must be a lot of guys out of work. And I called Vito and I said, Vito, how you doing? He goes, I haven't touched my guitar in 9 months. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I heard like Teen Spirit and put my guitar down and said, it's over. And I thought, really? And he goes, dude, yeah, really. I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit. I put my guitar down and said, why would anybody care about a shredder anymore? And that was the end. Well, I was writing an article, let's be fair. I was writing an article called Hair Today, Gone Tomorrow for some rock magazine. So I spoke to Vito and I said, what happened? He goes, man, I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit and I just stopped playing guitar. I said, what do you mean you stopped playing guitar? He said, I put a guitar down. And I said, I'm not playing guitar anymore. So what do you mean? He said, I didn't touch a guitar for 9 months. I heard it. I said, who the hell wants a lead guitar player who shreds? They want songs. They don't want all this, this diarrhea guitar stuff. So it basically put me out of business. It scared the crap out of me. I just said, why are we even here? Like, that's what the impact was. You know, if Quiet Riot and Motley Crue led off the genre, bands like White Lion were like the tail end, 6 years later. The only band left standing was Guns N' Roses. I wasn't playing. I was still managing bands and artists and singer-songwriters when it hit. I wrote an article about this, by the way. And I love you because you're younger, so you come upon this. It's like, I want to know the secret. I want to know, like, what is classic rock? And I already been down that road in my head. And why did the dinosaurs come and wipe out? I want to get this quote correct, and I want to give it to the right person. And I think it was Janie Layne who said what I'm about to say. He was driving on the 405 freeway in Los Angeles when KLOS played Smells Like Teen Spirit, and he pulled over and he went, my career is over as I know it. Like, why would they know that much? Like, why would something be that obvious to people? Why would you just know that your career is over? So it had an unbelievable effect, and MTV changed dramatically. So a friend of mine was an executive at MTV. So I called her and I asked her what happened. Because was it the equivalent of the dinosaur, of the meteor hitting, the world and wiping out the dinosaur? And she said that they would sit down every Tuesday to watch videos, the new videos. And, like all these little hair bands were like little jets on a runway, the Atlantic jet, the Columbia jet, the Geffen jet. The turning point was a video called Man in the Box by Alice in Chains. It totally shifted their focus away from, quote, hair bands that had dominated MTV and made Twisted Sister, or we made them. But, that was 84 for us. So here we are in 91. So I had a good run, 6 years, 7 years, and then Man in the Box comes out, and they look at it, and they had a choice to add Man in the Box or a video by a group called Thunder that was your typical prototypical heavy metal band, Hair, that did all the things that Hair is supposed to do and all this shit. And they were on Geffen, and that was the next hyped band coming, and they looked at Thunder, and they looked at Man in the Box, so Alice in Chains and went, we're taking that. And that was a road less traveled, and it wiped out the dinosaur, which was the hair metal bands. And it kind of ended. The only band that leapfrogged and saved themselves was Guns N' Roses. And my theory is that Guns N' Roses was not perceived as a joke. They came out of L.A., but I think that Axl, first of all, had a great voice. I think that they were perceived as real, not fake. Like they were real junkies. not pretend junkies. So authenticity is all about authenticity, and grunge is all about authenticity. People wanted authenticity, so they got it with grunge, and it wiped out the perceived frivolousness of hair metal, which is, hey man, let's party, let's get the girls and drink, and I think people just got sick of that, and they wanted authentic. That's what I think, anyway.
But you don't like the term hair metal, you said, right?
No, I think it's a derogatory term. I use it because it makes it easy for someone to, I can say 80s metal, 80s metal not here. But yeah, it's a derogatory term. It's acid rock or derogatory, folk rock. I mean, everyone comes up with a let's label it. It's skinny tie, it's new wave of British heavy metal. The press always has to do it. Let's just say that American 80s metal is pretty much of a type. It's of a type. It looks the same. It sounds the same. It is the same to a non-fan. My father used to say that everything sucked after 1945, like all music sucked. Like he made it really simple. 1945, before, after. Before, great. After, sucked. I said, how do you just dismiss 50 years? He goes, it's so easy. It's just baby, baby, baby. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's all it is. So if you don't care enough to know, you don't know, right? So if you don't care enough to know and you're a casual observer of MTV, you wouldn't know the difference in Warrant, Poison, Whitesnake. It's all the same, right? It's all the same. But you wouldn't know the difference in 1964 if you didn't care enough to know the difference in the Beatles, Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas, Jerry and the Pacemakers, Freddie and the Dreamers. If you didn't know, and you just heard the songs on the radio and showed pictures, you all go, it's all the same. It's all the same. This is the problem with genres as genres move forward. It's all the same. And Motown, it's the same guys playing on every track. You could dismiss it as all the same. I would never do it because I know Motown, so I can tell you the difference in every singer going. But if you don't care, it all sounds the same. If you don't care about Liverpool, it all sounds the same. If you don't care about 80s metal, it's all the same. If you don't care about grunge, it's all the same. That's the problem with country music. If you don't care about country, it's all the same. What does Alan Jackson say about country music? You play a country record backwards, the girl comes back, the car comes back, and the dog comes back, And that's a country guy making a joke about country. I don't know what you say about 80s metal, Party dude. That's what it should just be called, party dude, right? Everything's party dude. I mean, it existed as a genre. It had a nice run, right? But things evolve all the time. I mean, punk wiped out Foreigner, corporate rock for a while, right? Everything kind of goes through these phases. I mean, disco wiped out rock on radio for a while. So if you're around long enough, you see these gigantic trends that come. I mean, if we sit back now with 30 years perspective on this, and we look at the whole scale of it, and it goes to your question about classic rock, because a lot of the hair band music, now forget the hair band name, just say some of the songs that became hits are classic rock hits. So it evolved into an acceptance of a certain genre of music, and some stuff survived. But I think that the whole derogatory nature of the hair band moniker is not something I'm particularly happy about, because I think it degrades the bands. And there's good bands and there's bad bands in every genre. There's good versions and there's not so great versions of it. So, there was probably some really bad grunge bands. Every band that came out of Liverpool was not a hit. Some survive and some don't. Nirvana. So, I got to respect Kurt Cobain a great deal. I saw them on Saturday Night Live, that fabled concert where he hit his head with the guitar, and I thought they sucked. I went, wow, this band can't play. Right? That was my reaction. Because we came from a hard-bitten bar scene where we had to be great every night, And so when I saw bands that kind of looked stoned, they kind of looked like they didn't care, and I didn't have much respect, but I got a lot of respect over time. I thought Kurt Cobain was an extraordinary songwriter and singer, and deserves his legacy.
Hey guys, now I'm going to show you a clip from my interview with veteran radio broadcaster Alan Cross. If Nirvana had started out today, given how different the nature of music consumption is with the internet and how, MTV and radio aren't really the gatekeepers of who can listen to what anymore, like there's a way bigger selection of music for people to listen to than it was before. Do you think Nirvana would be as successful today as they were back then?
That's a really good question. I think that they would be popular. I think that they would get a lot of critical love. I think that they would probably be able to sell out venues much like Greta Van Fleet did. But to change the world, no. We just don't have world-changing artists anymore. And the reason is we can't all agree on which artist should change the world. Back in the 90s when Nirvana came out, there was no internet. There was no you had to sit in front of the TV to watch Much Music or MTV, hoping that your favorite video would come on instead of going on to see U2 or going on to YouTube. You had, if you wanted the music, you had to go and purchase a piece of plastic for, $15 or $20 or whatever it was, and that's a lot of money. And you would cherish that disc, and you would listen to it over and over and over again to get your money's worth out of that disc. And back then, too, you had four things that were basically running the music industry. You had radio, you had the record labels, you had record stores, and you had the video channels. And every once in a while, all four of them would come together in a consensus saying that this band is good. Everybody needs to like this band. And we went, oh, okay. And that's the way it had been since the beginning of the recorded music industry. But by the time we get to the 2000s, we don't need record stores anymore because we've got Napster and Audio Galaxy and LimeWire and BearShare and Kazaa and all the other file sharing programs, which allowed us to acquire all the music that we could never afford. And we didn't have to buy the whole album either. We could only buy the songs we wanted. And once you got online, you would find people who were just like you. And you would plumb through their collection of online files and go, okay, well, if this person likes this, then they must like, I should check out some of the other music that they like, and I might like it. So it's a completely different, the rules are completely changed. Nothing is the same as it used to be. And we will never see that kind of mass consensus about what's good. I mean, even, the biggest mainstream stars like your Beyoncés and your Lady Gagas and your Justin Biebers and your One Directions and even your BTSs, when it comes to the amount of cultural penetration that they have versus what kind of cultural penetration music used to have back in the day before the internet, apples and oranges. We all want what we as individuals want. We don't necessarily all group together and want the same thing at the same time in the numbers that we used to back in the day. So the economics of the music industry have changed, and the attitudes of music consumers have changed. So you put those two things together, and you could actually make a real argument for saying that Kurt Cobain was the last pure rock star we'll ever have.
The internet's only going to become more and more prevalent in our lives, so the idea of a centralized band is going to become even less and less practical. So do you think that like the bands pre-internet are going to have more of a longevity than, let's say, bands that come out now because they had that centralized focus?
Well, the heritage bands have a huge catalog of great music. That's the reason they're heritage bands. It's because they were really good at writing and recording songs. And those songs are going to exist forever. So if let me just back up a little bit. Yep. Back in the day, things were very tribal. So on one hand, you had the classic rock, the rockers. And on the other hand, you had the alternative kids. They were at war, these tribes. You, as an alternative kid, were not allowed to like anything that the rockers liked. So no Led Zeppelin, no Beatles, no Rolling Stones, no Lynyrd Skynyrd. That was all dinosaur rock crap. We were smarter. We were more enlightened. We were into, much more music that was much more interesting than that crap. And it worked the opposite way. So if you wanted to move from the alternative tribe to the rocker tribe, you'd be beaten up going in. And then when you crawled home with your tail between your legs to your alternative friends, they'd beat you up for being a traitor, and vice versa. Today, one of the things about the internet is that the silos, these tribes have broken down. And you talk to anybody who's 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, and you look at their playlist on their phone. I mean, they're listening to AC/DC and they're listening to Ariana Grande. They're listening to Led Zeppelin and they're listening to Drake. And they're listening to Billie Holiday in some cases, and they're listening to Jeff Buckley. I mean, they're extraordinarily ecumenical in their tastes. What we're seeing is today's music fans have no trouble mining different genres and mining different eras. And they're going back to the first, 50 years of rock, and they're finding out that, there's some really good stuff here. I mean, an AC/DC song from 1978 still sounds pretty damn good today. You listen to, Good Times, Bad Times from Led Zeppelin. You can't believe that was recorded in 1969. And of course, everybody's discovering the Beatles, and who doesn't, you cannot not like the Beatles. It just doesn't, they're eternal. So that's part of the problem too, is that now that almost the entire expanse of human musical creations is available with a few pokes at your phone, that's what today's artists have to deal with. That's their competition. It's not like if I was a kid I'm 20 years old, I'm in 1991. The music that I hear, the music that I'm into, is what I hear on my radio station and what I can afford to buy. Maybe I have an older brother and sister who have some stuff, but basically I want my music from my generation. Certainly don't want my parents' music. Now I can listen, if I'm 20 years old, I can listen to anything. And you know what? My parents, who grew up as Generation X, they had some pretty cool rockers, so I'm going to listen to them. That leaves a smaller and smaller slice for up-and-coming artists because they're competing with the greatest music of all time. Well, we go back to this idea of the song economy. Nobody wants to invest long-term in acts. We just want to get as much money as we can out of individual songs. That's it. And the other thing, too, is that with the audience not wanting, the consensus is that, there's so much music out there. I'm only going to give my love and attention to so many bands. That's back in the day. You have to understand that the record labels created this artificial shortage. They were the cultural filter. They only let through what they thought was good. That would then go to the record stores, which would only stock the stuff that they thought was good. And then the video channels would only play what they thought was good, and then radio stations would only play what they thought was good. So there were all these different filters that created a real finite amount of music that people could choose from. Now you can choose from 60 million songs on Spotify. All that is gone. There is a site called Forgotify that you can connect to your Spotify account, and it will spit out a series of songs that have never, ever been played even once by anyone on Spotify. So if it's estimated that 20% of the 60 million songs on Spotify have never been played once. Wow. And, Spotify is adding, 12 million songs a year? It's like, who's got time for all this? And the problem is, it was created this situation where, okay, I'm listening to this. Okay, I really like it. Okay, but there's got to be something else out there. So you don't spend time with these songs anymore. And this leads into a whole other discussion. The problem is that, when you bought an album with 12 songs on it, you listened to those 12 songs over and over and over again. That became your world. Now you've got 60 million songs to choose from, and you might be liking the song that you're listening to now, but there's that nagging feeling that, is this what everybody else is listening to? Is there something better than this? Is there something else that, I'm bored with that already. Let's just move on to something else.
Hey guys, now I'm going to show you a clip from my interview with Steve Albini, Nirvana producer from In Utero. So if Nirvana was around today, given how dispersed things are, and given the nature of the internet and how it's hard to just pinpoint one person, do you think they would have become as big as they did?
Everything that happens is a confluence of the circumstances and the influences of the time. So at the moment, nobody watches MTV for videos, for music videos. So if a band had a moment of success due to a successful music video, that avenue is probably not there anymore. You know, if there was a band that had a successful hype campaign and payola and were being splashed on the radio a lot, now nobody listens to the radio. So who knows if that would have any effect whatsoever. It's just the world operates differently now. And I'd like to think that a stylish and distinctive band that is a unique and genuine aesthetic, like that they would still find an audience. I do think that there's a kind of an appeal to authenticity that rock music fans have that I think is misguided. Like, people think of learning to play the guitar and playing the guitar is somehow validating, whereas learning to use a sampler and assembling ideas using digital techniques for whatever reason isn't valid. I think that's a specious argument. I think that, you know, I don't think these little turf battles have meaning. I learned to play the guitar and I use the guitar because that's my instrument of facility, right? But I can't denigrate somebody else using different techniques and different tools to express themselves. I just don't. I don't see that one idiom is fundamentally better or more valid or more authentic than another. I'm not. If I were to leap into the computerized world of digital music right now, I would be bad at it, and it doesn't appeal to me enough to make me want to overcome that hurdle and become good at it. So I'm going to persist with the tools that I'm already proficient with, and hope that my ideas can transcend the execution, right? Mm-hmm. By the same token, I wouldn't expect somebody whose only experience with music is doing sample collages and using MIDI instruments and that sort of thing. I wouldn't expect that person to be able to translate to a live performance model comfortably and easily. I think that would be a mistaken expectation as well.
I was doing some research on Nirvana's possible fourth record, and I came across a really interesting article on nirvanalegacy.com. The author, Nick Soulsby, dives deep into detail as to what the record may have looked like and what it may not have looked like. For instance, it's been said that if a fourth Nirvana record would have been made, it would have been much more acoustic-oriented than any of the three previous records. Nick Soulsby makes the argument that if there was a fourth record, it would not have been acoustic-oriented. He takes the position that there's no real reason to believe that a fourth record would have deviated electrically from how the previous three were. He cites various examples as to why he believes this would have been the case. He talks about a variety of things as well, including Do Re Mi, You Know You're Right, and much more. Quote, Michael Stipe is clear that he invited Kurt Cobain to join him and REM in March of 1994 simply because he was scared about Cobain's state of mind. It wasn't a plan for a collaboration, it was a musical intervention. The idea that Stipe was about to halt REM's own album recording plans for Monster in order to record a fully fledged body of work with Cobain is simply unreal. REM were in studio in February, booked in again for early April. There's no time. Similarly, the idea for a Nirvana Lollapalooza tour EP, that it was supposed to be released after the Pennyroyal Tea single, again, there's nothing except an idea for a release, no substance at all. Interviewing members of Geffen management for the I Found My Friends book, they were clear that there was nothing they recall even discussing at the time. Nirvana's supposed new release wasn't worth remembering because it never existed. What about You Know You're Right, though? It's a demo, a good one, but still a demo. There's obvious work still to be done to create a credibly releasable song. Pat Smear himself has suggested that he was told he could add parts to it, but as nothing happened, even he is unwilling to confirm that the song was deemed complete at the time. Now, it is true that on Nevermind and on Bleach, Nirvana used older recordings from previous sessions, but it seems that was a decision taken during album sessions, not a deliberate plan ahead of time. It makes it unlikely You Know You're Right was something being placed in the can ready for later. And Do Re Mi suffers from the shadow cast by MTV Unplugged. Though a titanic performance, that session was a contractually obligated TV format Nirvana was required to adhere to if they wished to perform. Unplugged, therefore, says nothing about Nirvana's own intentions, though they were flirting with acoustic segments for a time in 1993. Nirvana's albums are over 90% electric all the way. The idea of a new singer-songwriter direction, though alluring and possible, isn't substantiated by any evidence. Do Re Mi itself was unlikely to remain in its unadorned bedroom demo form. When Kurt strains for a note, it sounds more like the technique he uses on other home demos, to indicate where he'd be adding a scream in the final amplified version. People point back to Cobain leftovers to claim that the band could have cobbled together a complete work, forgetting about Kurt's strong pride in his work, his deep consideration of the final form, and selection for each album. For instance, Old Age was abandoned at this point, a gift to his wife, so no longer even a Nirvana song. With Talk to Me, there is so far no evidence supporting rumors it was played in '94. Though there is clear evidence it was so uninteresting to Cobain and the band that in the numerous sessions from the spring of '92 onwards, and all those concerts too, they didn't even attempt it. Opinion and the original verse-chorus-verse had gone missing years earlier too. The use of songs on In Utero that were actually written from 1990 to 1991 is well testified, but is poor evidence for other possible situations like that. The unknown rehearsal instrumental added to the In Utero Deluxe was so dashed off no one involved had even remembered it existed. Then there's the Unknown song that gets played twice in late '93 and at the January '94 session. Now, that at least is a credible new Nirvana song, but it's still only a minute-and-a-half shred. Alongside You Know You're Right, however, it certainly lays to rest the idea that Cobain was abandoning the effects pedal and volume. Heck, Nirvana didn't even play MTV Unplugged. One could look to his various home demos with Courtney Love to tease out future works, except nothing seen so far has been a truly credible new song. They are whimsical games. There's little to see so far, though I look forward to the eventual archive release. Others hold out great faith for Cobain giving up being the guiding force in Nirvana and letting Dave Grohl shoehorn some songs in. To be fair, at least Dave had the material at the time. Again, though I just don't see it. This was Cobain's fiefdom. He might take the odd idea, try the odd B-side, but handing over a percentage of the album to his drummer? This wasn't a democracy. On the bright side, though, Nirvana were quick, disciplined workers in the studio. There's no reason to claim they weren't capable of jamming together a bunch of songs over the course of '94 to '95 in the way that MV, Gallons, The Other, I Hate Myself, Milk It, Serve the Servants, and so forth don't seem to have existed until late '92. These were talented and experienced musicians. But the question, what do the demos currently available show? The answer is they show Cobain had one unknown song he was tinkering with. He had You Know You're Right, he had Do Re Mi. 3 data points isn't enough to draw any kind of pattern. Though, of course, the past isn't a perfect guide to the future. It's speculation. And it'll always be speculation. Which is kind of fun, isn't it?